Hello everyone. In one of my CAD classes, a student brought up this question that when we have several CAD files, can we define a global variable for parametric design such that this global variable acts like a global variable that you have in programming? Like all of the CAD models, they use the same parameter, they use the same variable, and this variable is only defined in one single place. And if you go to that single place and change that value, then all of those CAD files are affected by it, okay? Because we know in each CAD file, we can go to the tools and we can add equations and we can define global what? Global variables, but these global variables for one file is not going to be shared with another file. So the idea is, how do we share the same parameter, the same variable among several separate CAD files? So in order to answer that, here I'm going to show you a simple demo of a bolt and a nut, hex bolt and hex nut, and the parameter I chose is D, which is basically the diameter of the shaft of the bolt. And here, let's say I go with M10. So I make it 10 mils, right? And let's just keep it very simple. Let's say that's the only parameter I have. And so now what you do is you go to export, and you export this to a text file. Let's say call it equations.txt, right? And export it. So now if I go to my downloads, I should have that text file, and if I click on it, I should have that parameter with its value, right? So now I go ahead and very fast make a hex bolt. Of course, very, very simple. I'm not gonna do all of the design and all of the thread and everything, just the very, very rough design. So this is equals to 2D, right? And then the height for this extrusion is 0.75D. And then I go to the bottom face and I draw the shaft, and the diameter of the circle is D. And then I extrude it for a length of 4D. Okay, so let's say this is a very, very what? Basic, extremely simple design of a hex bolt. And I save it as the hex bolt. Now here I go ahead and make another part, and I call this hex nut, right? But before I do the sketch, I want to be able to use what? That D parameter, right? So first I bring that D parameter, then I use it. And how do I do that? Again, I go to tools and go to equations, and this time I import it. I import that text file, and if you see here, let me expand this. The only parameter recognized in it is D10 mil, so I say bring it in, and you see now that D is imported and it's gray. You cannot go ahead and change it, right? It is now a part of that text file, and it depends on the text file. You cannot change that. So I OK it, right? Let me change this to millimeters, and now I go to the top view and I do the hex again, and here this dimension again should be 2D. So look, now you see here I can use the same D, right? That's the same 10 mil. I can easily use that, and let's go ahead and make this one. And again, for simplification, you have to read this drilling hole size from a chart, from a tap drill chart. But let's say for simplicity, this is a D times 0.8 or 0.85. 85% of D. And then I have to extrude it for a full amount of D. Good. And then I call this the hexagons. So I got two parts. Both of them are linked to that text file. And now all I need to do is go ahead and change this number. So instead of M10, let's make it M20 and save it. Right? And now let's go back to the SolidWorks. And all I need to do is to click on rebuild. Here we go. You see, M10 is now what? M20, and then go ahead and do the same thing for the hexagons. Here we go. Right? You see? So now if I go and make an assembly and bring all of this in to assembly, then I can say all of my assembly is simply what? Relying on a single parameter here, which is what? Which is D, right? So I have these two, right? And then, now of course, you know, you cannot do concentric here because the size of that is smaller, right? But here, just for the sake of practice, right? You clearly see that everything here depends on this parameter. So now if I make it M8 again and save it, that's my global variable. All I need to do is to come here and then rebuild. There we go. Right? So that is how you define parameters that act like a global variable. You define them in one place, which is in a text file, and they are going to affect everything in your assembly or across several CAD files. So hopefully this video was useful to you, and I will see you in my next lecture. Thank you so much.